Hello and welcome. You love what you do. I know you know that's not the problem. The problem is that what you do may not be producing what you need it to produce, at least not consistently. And if you're anything like I was, that's incredibly confusing because you're not just sitting around doing nothing. You're showing up, you're serving clients, you're creating content, you're building relationships, you're networking, you're investing in your business, you're doing all the right things, all the things that you've been told by successful entrepreneurs to do. And yet the income still fluctuates. One month can feel really great. The next month, a little uncertain. Then a good month comes along and gives you hope again. Then, you know where I'm going, right? Another slow month arrives, and suddenly you're wondering, wait, am I doing something wrong? Maybe you've even had that quiet thought lingering in the back of your mind. I know I have. Is this just how entrepreneurship's supposed to work? Or sometimes it's an even harder question. What am I doing wrong? I know that question, and I know it intimately because I asked it for years, not days, not months, years. I would look around and see other people talking about freedom and flexibility and abundance. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was working so hard. I genuinely loved my business, and I still do. But there was a gap between all that hard work, all that effort that I was putting in, and the income that I was creating. They didn't match. And that gap did not make sense to me. On paper, everything looked fine. But in reality, honestly, I felt like I was running on a treadmill, moving constantly, working constantly, panicking, wondering if I was going to run out of time, yet somehow never feeling like I was actually getting ahead. And what made it even harder, honestly, was the isolation. Because entrepreneurs, we carry a lot. We carry the responsibility, we carry the decisions, we carry the pressure, and we carry financial uncertainty. Yep, dare I say, we do. And because we're builders, we often just assume that if something isn't working, well, we probably just need to work harder, right? We need to learn more. We need to do more. We need to push more. We need to up that dial on the treadmill and run a little faster. Well, if you're anything like me and you do what I do, eventually you hit a point where you're so exhausted from carrying the entire weight of growth yourself and running faster than you should. You start wondering, okay, so I've done all this hard work, but why does it still feel this hard? If you've ever asked yourself that question, I want you to know that you're not alone because that's where I found myself. And I will also say I've had countless conversations with other entrepreneurs who are also behind the scenes feeling much the same way. And that's where this story really begins. I want to share with you where I was because I think it might sound familiar. I've been an entrepreneur for more than 15 years. And during all of those years, I've spent an unbelievable number of hours working, obviously, not pretending to work, actually working, serving clients, building programs, creating content, networking, launching, signing on clients, learning, investing, marketing, showing up. Do I need to continue? As an entrepreneur, you know only too well what's involved. So the problem was not hard work. I was not afraid of it. The problem was that the results were not matching the effort. I was spending enormous amounts of time generating an income that depended almost entirely on me, and it wasn't even lining up. If I stopped, the growth slowed. If I stopped, the momentum slowed. If I stopped, well, the revenue slowed right down. I was the engine, and it wasn't the engine that could anymore. Everything depended on me. Eventually, you know how it goes. That little engine gets so tired. Not only was I working really hard, I was also investing in things. Like many entrepreneurs, I invested heavily in programs, coaching, mentorship, leadership, training, all the things. Tens of thousands of dollars over the years. Dollars that I honestly did not have to spend. Some of those experiences were helpful. In fact, I have no regrets. They all were helpful in some way. But I also learned something about what hype can look like. I learned what overpromising looks like. I learned what disappointment feels like. And because of all of that, I became very cautious. I became skeptical and, dare I say, maybe even a bit cynical. On a positive note, I developed a pretty strong filter. When opportunities came along, and many, many, many of them did, I didn't jump. I stopped, I questioned, I evaluated, and I looked very, very closely. So when this opportunity that I'm going to share with you today crossed my path, I didn't immediately jump in and say yes. In fact, I probably looked at it more critically than most people do in light of my experiences, because I had just seen too much to just blindly believe yet another pretty promise. But the biggest shift happened when I started actually asking myself a different question. For years, I asked myself, how do I grow more? How do I make more? I even said, how do I work harder? Isn't that terrible? But eventually, I realized, what if it's not reliant on just me? I started asking a deeper question. Where is my time actually going? And more importantly, what am I getting for that time? What is that time actually producing? When I looked at it like this, the question changed everything. Because this is not necessarily about working less. It's about making sure that the hours that you're already spending are producing the results you need. And you've heard the saying, work smarter, not harder. I didn't want to walk away from the business that I love. I wasn't looking for an escape plan. I just needed a better foundation, something that would support me, my limited bandwidth, I am not a superhero, and my time. Something that could work alongside what I'd already built. After all, 15 years in, was I ready to just walk away? No, I was definitely not. But I needed to be smarter. I was looking to find something to supplement what I was doing. I also knew it had to pass the integrity test. Over the years, most things did not. But finally, just recently, this thing came in my lap, thanks to a trusted colleague and friend, and this one passed the test. But before I tell you why, I want to share something I wish that someone had taught me years ago. Because this is the lesson that changed everything for me. The first realization was this, and I apologize if it makes you go ouch, because it certainly did for me. Most of us are measuring the wrong thing. We measure effort, and then we feel entitled. All of that effort should equal great income. How many hours did I work? How busy was I? Facepalm. How much did I get done? But hours are just the input. They're not the outcome. What matters is what those hours actually produce at the end of the day, because if they are not producing revenue, then we are just engaging in a hobby. And we don't want to talk about what they might produce someday. I always had this idea in my head that it's always around the corner. It's just around the bend, just hanging a little longer, a little longer, a little longer. And that income just never, I don't know if I just thought that the dam would break and suddenly everything would click and all the money would fly in and overwhelm me. Is that a thing? But what I realized is that nothing was changing. Each month I sat and I wonder, what can I do differently this month to generate the revenue? And once you've tried what feels like everything, you start to wonder, is there even anything? So here's an exercise that changed my perspective. Take your income from last month, whatever that is, no shame here, whether you made a gazillion dollars or $2. Divide that number by the number of hours that you worked. Not the hours that you wished you had worked, the hours that you actually worked. What number did you get? Now, if it was $2, we probably can't even come up with that number. It's so small. But if we're honest and we actually do the math on this, we then realize what our current return on time is. This little exercise is powerful because it reminds us that it's all fine and dandy to do a business that we love. But if our time isn't producing something in terms of income, now don't get me wrong, there is something to be said about impact and supporting people and doing all the things. Of course there is. But if you have to go get a part-time job to support what you're doing, then is the work actually going to fulfill every need that you have? Probably not. For a lot of entrepreneurs, that number, the conversion of hours to pay, is startling. And again, it's not because they're not trying, and it's not because they're doing anything wrong. But here's the thing, nobody has ever taught them to take an honest look at where their time is going and whether it's produced the income that they need it to. So the realization is that not all hours are equal. Some hours produce income. Some simply produce activity. I became a professional in the latter. I presented all kinds of beautiful things for the world, but they never landed in the hands of the right people. Because, well, it's just easier to be busy because then you can tell yourself that you're being really productive. You can spend 3 hours creating content. You can spend 3 hours or more tweaking your website, getting it just perfect. And you can spend hours and hours learning yet another strategy because clearly that previous one doesn't work. But are these things that you're working on creating income? That's an entirely different question. Many entrepreneurs, myself included, have been guilty of spending significant portions of their week doing things that feel productive but don't meaningfully move revenue forward. Contrary to how it might feel, that is not a personal failure. It's simply a structural problem, and structural problems require structural solutions. 2 focused hours can outperform 8 scattered hours. I mean, I knew that, but it's one thing to know something and it's another to start applying it. I know it sounds strange, but I have truly experienced this firsthand recently. When your time is pointed towards activities that actually generate income, the return per hour, well, duh, it changes dramatically. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily working less, but the time that you are putting in is way more intentional, and those hours produce something, which in turn can feed into other hours. And here's the thought that I want to leave you with here. If the current hours that you're using were producing the income and the consistency of that income, you probably wouldn't be watching this masterclass. So the question isn't whether you have time for something different. Many of us think that we don't. The question is whether what you're currently doing is worth the time that it's already taking. Is it paying you well? That's not a criticism. We teach what we most need to learn, right? It's simply a question worth asking. And it's certainly, if we're being honest, the question that I needed to ask myself. So what does it actually look like to fix this? I want to tell you what I found, and I want to be clear. I wasn't looking for some random side hustle. I was definitely not looking for a quick fix. I was not looking for something that was going to replace my business that I've spent years and years building. After all, did I just come this far only to come this far? I was looking for something specific, something aligned. Whatever it was, it had to complement what I'm already doing. It could not, under any circumstance, compete with it. And given the work I do in the world of collaborations, it had to be relationship-based, trust-based, connection-based. It had to align with my values. And really important, it had to feel ethical. It had to be built on integrity, and it had to feel sustainable for something I can work with for a long time to come. And yes, guess what else? It actually has to produce income. Why? I don't know. Not theoretically, not someday in the future, actually producing income now as soon as possible. So when I found the digital growth community, otherwise known as legacy builders, what stood out for me wasn't flashy marketing. It was the architecture. It was the simplicity. It was the community in there. It was the fact that it works alongside an existing business beautifully instead of insisting that we abandon it. What also had me say yes was I didn't need to change who I am as a person, as a business owner. I didn't need to change my audience. Believe me, it's taken me years to build that up. And I certainly did not need to walk away from all the work I'm doing when it comes to collaborations and partnerships and ecosystems. I simply added another income stream alongside the business that I already love. And perhaps most importantly, it aligned with what I've come to believe about growth, especially growth in business. Growth shouldn't require us to sacrifice everything. It shouldn't require us to carry every burden alone, which, by the way, is something I've gotten pretty used to. So when I talk about community with the legacy builders, I'm talking about a group of 60,000 plus people who want to support each other and see each other succeed. Growth absolutely needs to be built on relationships, and it needs to be built on trust and community. In addition to that, though, is that the Legacy Builders program has systems that are already built. It's already done for you. That's the crazy part about this, is it's done for you, and you can become a licensed member to be able to bring others into the community and get paid 100% what they pay to get in. These systems, this program, the funnels, all of it has been built to support entrepreneurs all over who just simply want to grow. So I spent years and years being the sole engine, the little engine that could not anymore. I choose to let that go. Not because I'm tired and I want to quit, but because I now understand that it's not the right architecture. Working solo, I can plug into other opportunities. I can embrace other relationships and connections to grow this ecosystem that I'm building. This has given me a different architecture. And that's why I said yes. It's different, but it's complementary. So here's your next step. And I promise it's really, really simple. Whether you're on the landing page or you have found this video elsewhere, I will provide a button where you can go and grab your 2-hour workday blueprint. This isn't a pitch deck. It's not a motivational video. It's actually just a practical guide and a peek into what the model actually looks like, what the 2 hours can look like so that you can generate income and get your time back. It will show you what happens during those 2 hours, how the income works, how this can fit so beautifully alongside your existing business. And even if you don't have a business and you just want to get into this world of having an online business, this is perfect. The goal is really, really simple. The blueprint will give you just enough information so that you can evaluate this opportunity honestly. You're not committing to anything, you're not signing anything, and you're simply doing what thoughtful entrepreneurs need to do. You're taking a serious look before making a decision. If it fits, you'll know. If it doesn't, you'll know that too. And that's perfectly okay. I'm not here to tell you that this is for everyone, and I'm not here to make promises and tell you you're going to be a millionaire tomorrow. Like any other business, we need to work it. I am here to tell you that this was the right move for me, and I want to give you the same honest look at it that I wish I'd had even a year ago. So click that button below, get your blueprint, and you can see for yourself. Thank you for spending this time with me.